The most dangerous place in the world for an idea is inside someone's head. Not because ideas die there, they don't. They sit, perfectly preserved, like insects in amber, for years. Sometimes decades. This is a story about what happens when AI finally melts that amber. And why the melt rate matters more than you think. 8 years. That's how long one developer carried a product idea, fully formed, technically feasible, genuinely useful. Not waiting for inspiration. Not waiting for courage. Not waiting for a sign from the universe. Just waiting for the bandwidth to actually build it. The idea was free. The execution cost years they didn't have. Here's something nobody says out loud: most ideas don't die from competition. They don't die from bad timing or lack of funding. They die from a gap between knowing exactly what something should do and knowing how to make a computer do it. That's not a knowledge gap. It's a translation gap. And it has been quietly swallowing human potential for decades. Then AI coding assistants arrived. And the translation gap started compressing. Not disappearing, compressing. Like a file you've been meaning to send that turns out to be 90% smaller than you remembered. Suddenly the cost of saying "here is what I want" and receiving working software in return dropped by an order of magnitude. 3 months. That's what the same project took once AI was in the loop. Not because the developer became smarter. Not because the idea got simpler. Because AI is extraordinarily good at the part of software development that looks like typing but is actually archaeology, excavating through syntax, APIs, and documentation to retrieve the precise incantation that makes a machine do what you already know you want it to do. This is called programming, and it is, technically, magic. Think of it this way: building software before AI was like composing music when you could hear the melody perfectly in your head, every note, every instrument, but had to learn the piano from scratch before you could play a single bar. AI is the pianist who leans over and says, "Hum it to me. I'll find the keys." And this compression isn't just a productivity story. It's a redistribution story. The people who had ideas but not the specific technical fluency to execute them, they are building now. Domain experts. Researchers. Teachers. People who've spent 8 years knowing precisely what a tool should do but lacking the vocabulary to conjure it. They're entering a room that previously required a very specific kind of credential to unlock. 8 years of wanting. 3 months of building. The idea didn't improve. The world didn't simplify. What changed is that the cost of translating human intent into working software dropped somewhere around 96%. That's not a developer story. That's a civilizational shift in who gets to make things. And who gets to make things has always determined, with startling reliability, what actually gets made. Strip the story down and here's what remains: the bottleneck was never inspiration, and it was never courage. It was translation, the grinding, invisible labor of converting human intent into something a machine would accept. AI didn't change what we want to build. It changed the cost of asking. And when that cost drops by 96%, the question of who gets to build stops being about talent or credential, and starts being about who has something worth saying. That's not a productivity story. That's a redistribution of creative power, and redistributions of power have consequences that take decades to fully see. What strikes us is how quietly this is happening. No ceremony, someone who spent 8 years knowing exactly what they wanted just made it. In 3 months. We keep reaching for words like productivity and efficiency. We think those words are doing work to avoid saying something more uncomfortable: that technical execution was always a form of gatekeeping. The gate just got a lot easier to open. Which makes us wonder: if building gets cheap enough that anyone with a real problem can make a real solution, what exactly were we protecting by keeping it expensive?